Hello, COMM-113 Section 5 class. My name is Pedro Jesus Quinones, and this is my good friend Kyle Shefflin.
Hello.
We're both on Discord right now, social distance communication, and we're going to talk about my empathy assignment. So, the topic we chose to discuss and that we often disagree about is the right to repair movement. So, the right to repair refers to a movement in the tech world to pass legislation or pressure companies to allow consumers to modify and repair their electronic devices. And I know Kyle has an example of that.
Yeah, most phones, iPhone, Samsung, are industrially glued together. It's very hard to pull them apart, to
Hmm.
touch the insides of them.
Yeah. I know some of the um, older students in this class might know that before phones, you could actually take out the back and replace the battery or change out the storage in it. You can put in your own expandable storage. But nowadays, those options are basically non-existent. So it's kind of this ever-growing movement in the tech world to make things more form factor and structured, where the first party has complete control over the product, um, to not allow it to be modified and also not allow it to be repaired other than how they want it to be repaired at their own stores. Um, so that is the issue. And first, I'm going to talk about my position and why I think it's correct and why I think the opponent, Kyle, is wrong. So I am of the belief that while there are these issues about um, the phone having no ability to repair on the consumer side. I think that the right repair would be bad for the companies because it would stifle innovation. Um, it wouldn't allow companies to make what they want to make. The iPhone, for example, and most phones nowadays is incredibly specific in what it wants to do in the sense of how thin it wants to be, or on the screen how it wants to have a completely borderless screen so that you don't see any bezels. And you couldn't do that if the companies had to be forced to take out the back and replace the battery or put in expandable storage or make it that much easier to replace a screen if it breaks. All these limitations that they put on the phone about making it very delicate and making it hard to repair are pros in terms of the final product. They allow them to make the product that they want to make. And I think also in that sense, it also keeps the prices low. If a company was forced to, say, make up a removable back or removable battery, that would be more time for the development team and more time in the phone to have those capabilities. So that would inevitably raise the prices instead of making the vision that they want to make. Um, I also think that giving the companies control on how their products are modified helps streamline the process of repair, instead of going to, say, a third party repair. If you have, again, an iPhone, for example, you know exactly where to go. You go to the Genius Bar, and you know that their employees will be well trained and that you'll get a better quality repair than if you go to a third party repair. And I know most people probably already know of how Samsung's phones blew up a couple years ago. And that was a big PR disaster for them, and they did really face the consequences of that. But you don't hear in the big headlines about the third party store that maybe gave you a bad battery and now your phone doesn't work anymore, or just maybe while they were digging in the phone broke something and now you have to buy a whole new phone. Um, so I think giving the companies that right on how the product is repaired really helps, in the sense of the quality of your repairs. Um, Also in the same sense how it's just a issue that isn't necessarily as important. We are already used to having such a prestige and nice looking, basically piece of jewelry that is our phones or our products. Um, and so I think people already know the um, what's it called? The give or take of that. The fact that, okay, we get this really nice and prestige and well functioning device, but we do sacrifice that repairability and such. So I do believe that most people don't really care about that issue. They would rather go out and have their phone repaired than try to repair it themselves. So I think it's really creating an issue that's not necessarily there. Um, there's also the fact of property laws. I know that there are sometimes issues with um, third party or companies in another country, say just buying an iPhone or a new Galaxy, putting like a sticker or making like a minor adjustment to it, and then selling it again at full price because they repaired it. So I think it's really important for companies, and not just these big companies like Apple or Samsung, but even for smaller people. Like for me who writes code, I don't want my code to be stolen so that someone could repair it and make a different product of it. So I think it's really important to respect those property rights of those people. And yeah, now Kyle, you can go ahead.
Yeah. So technology is a really big part of our lives. It's everyone, especially in the pandemic, everyone needs a computer, laptop, phone. It's in a lot of places, and most right to repair, most repair shops are just little small buildings, indie repair shops, who don't actually need the full blueprint of the product to be able to repair it. They just need access to the manufacturing parts. And if you can only go to the company that made it to repair your product, that kind of gives them like a repair monopoly, um, on the product. Um, let's see. It there's also they could tell you that your product is unrepairable or would cost more to repair it. They can lie to you and say, oh, it'd be cheaper to just buy a new one. It's going to cost them $70 for a screen replacement, but they could make 1,000 by selling you a new phone. They're kind of incentivized to just sell you something new.
Hmm.
Um, and that creates more waste because you just throw the phone away if you can't repair it.
Hmm.
Um, and this is also already a mainstream thing in the automotive industry. All right, if you need a part for your '95 Toyota Camry, you can get that part. It's pretty easy, and you just go to an indie repair shop for your car to do that. Um, and another point is that planned obsolescence is a real thing. It's been a discussion since the Great Depression. They want products to last a certain amount of time so that they eventually break. You buy a new one that helps the economy.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah, honestly, I think my sister's going through that. She has like an older iPhone, and she's been saying that she has been getting some slower updates ever since the new one came out. So
yeah, yeah.
yeah, it's
Known
definitely
to
it's a
happen.
possibility. Yeah. So yeah, now we're supposed to talk about how our opponent is right and how we're wrong in some cases.
Okay.
So yeah, I can understand definitely how it can keep the overall cost down in certain situations. Maybe not the initial price of the product, but if you need to repair it, like instead of having to buy a whole new phone, you can just go to a third party and get a screen. Or even if you're getting the battery repaired, you don't have to go first party and get a brand new battery. You can go third party and get a like used battery or just slightly used, maybe refurbished part at a much lower cost. So I can't see how that would be beneficial to the consumer. And I also definitely understand the waste part of it. In the same way a first party company might say, "Oh, the screen's broken. We have to get a new phone," and then um, they just throw away the phone and give you a new one. And whether or not they're lying, they are getting rid of the phone now. Um, while there was only one part broken about it. So a phone that has a lot of parts that could be modified, that could be repaired easily, I could see would actually cut down on waste a lot. Yeah. Now you go ahead.
Yeah, and I can see if you force a company to make their product repairable, add like the removable backs or something, that can kind of drive up prices, um, by doing that. And if they also, but I can also see, that if a first party repair, if you bring it to Apple, there's more accountability, and you're more likely to get a quality repair than if you bring it to an independent repair shop, something third party.
Yeah. Yeah. Great. So now we're talking about how both positions are correct and both are wrong. So I know I'm right about innovation and how that's important and that people should have the rights over their own ideas and their own properties. You go ahead.
And I know that I'm right that um, consumers should be able to repair a product that they own and they bought and paid for.
And but I also know that I'm wrong, that I should acknowledge how technology is infused with our daily lives and we should have more rights and control over these tools that really are the foundation of our lives, especially now, like you said, in the pandemic. Now go ahead.
Yeah, and I know that the right to repair movement is not a one blanket solution to fix everything about this. Um, you know, it needs to be able to protect both the consumer and the company.
Yeah. And now to talk about how it isn't important what side is right or wrong. Um, so we know that this issue is important. We're both very passionate about it. Um, but it's just very abstract thing that doesn't affect our relationship directly. So we don't really let it disrupt our friendship. We just talk about it and have certain points and such like that. And finally, we have to affirm that there is in fact truth in all perspectives. Um, so I do think that innovation is very important, and the best way to do that is to have the creator have control over their own creation. Um, but I know that there is a lot of problems with creators having that much control, having complete control over not only the creation of the device, but how it is used and modified afterwards in intellectual property law. Um, and I know that there should be things put in place to give just even a bit more consideration to the consumer, especially considering the fact that it is such an important part of the consumer life. And I also know how forcing only the only allowing the first party um, developer to have control over their products does create a lot of waste. That is something that I realize now. Now you go ahead.
Yeah, I still believe that consumers should have the right to change, modify, and or repair a product that they own and they paid for. But I understand that there are roadblocks and adversities to allowing that, in the avenue of intellectual property, and you don't want to just hand out the entire blueprint for a product so that someone can just buy the parts, make their own, maybe cheaper.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So how has this process changed our view of the other side? So I do realize how now that there's an other side to the coin, that the creator has the creation, but the consumer has their tool, their part of their life that they should have control over. Go ahead.
And I understand right to repair is not, it's not a ready-made solution, and that there's a lot of work that needs to be done so that it does protect the consumer, the manufacturer, and the company that makes the product.
Okay, and now for final reflection. Um, I am more able to understand the other side now. I realize this is an important issue to a lot of people, especially in the sense that they need control over their technology, over their devices, because they are really the tools for their life, especially now. Um, I would say that this wasn't too difficult of a process. Sure, we talk about this issue a lot and we disagree, but I know we wouldn't really let it get in the way of our friendship. Um, what I learned is the many things that Right to Repair tries to solve, things such as mitigating waste and giving the consumer more control. Let me go ahead.
Yeah. Um, so I do understand the other side. This is a big issue. Technology is a huge, huge part of everyone's lives, especially today. And um, it wasn't really a difficult process for me. I've had products break and need repair, and I've also been following the right to repair movement for a few years. Um, but going over this, I've definitely learned that it's not really a cut and dry thing. There's a lot of work that needs to be done in order to get legislation and implement it nationwide.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that was my empathy assignment. Thank you for watching.